Hello and welcome to episode 6 of the Paranormal Paradigm podcast with your hosts, me, Ben Kelly.
And Kieran Woodhouse.
And today we are going to be interviewing a lovely lady called Eva Vennari.
Yeah, Eva Vennari contacted us about coming onto the show. I know she's been on a couple of other shows. And she's the founder and CEO of the Elevate Institute, a cutting-edge health coaching firm specialising in empowering individuals to take charge of their body and health. Having spent most of her adult life suffering all kinds of conditions, she took matters into her own hands, and that's when everything shifted and her body became her best and most devoted ally. Now, you're probably wondering that doesn't sound very paranormal. What's that got to do with ghosts and stuff? Well, she does have some paranormal experiences she wishes to talk about, and she also discusses how if you improve your health and if your body is in a good condition, then it does, I guess, elevate your spiritual awareness and enables you to experience paranormal goings on a little bit better. So that's what we'll be discussing today. Sorry for the week delay, by the way. I did have a baby, so he's now here. So apologies if he starts crying. It's not me. And
also, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. But it's not me or Ben crying this time. It'll be little Larry in the background. So apologies for that if you do hear it. But yeah, before we go into the interview, we thought we'd start a new kind of thing where every week we'll discuss a different topic on the paranormal. And today I believe we were going to discuss TV programs.
Yeah, so whether you think they're real, whether they're faking stuff. So we're on about programs like Most Haunted, for example, or more ghost stories, or other things like that. I mean, there's plenty of them to go around.
There are. I mean, every year there seems to be another program on the Travel Channel or something like that.
Especially at this time of year as well.
Yes, they tend to pick up around Halloween. Yeah. I mean, I used to love Most Haunted. I don't know about you. When I was I was about 10 or 11 when it first came onto the scene, and I used to watch it.
I never used to watch it. And then I started hearing things about them maybe faking stuff and that sort of thing. And then I used to watch it to see if I could spot if they were faking stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a hot topic, really, and I guess it is quite controversial, as to whether they do fake things or not. And it's something I certainly discuss, touch on it in the book. I talk about it in my presentations. I'm a firm believer that these guys, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures and all this, they start out with the best of intentions. They want to hunt ghosts, because most of them are doing it before the TV shows before the TV producers get a hold of them. It's not that they want to be on TV, so they become ghost hunters. They were ghost hunters who are now on TV. So they always have the best of intentions, but you always need to think about what a TV program is, and when you watch a program,
they've got to make it entertaining.
That's exactly it,
and that's it.
Yeah, and when a program states to you, this is for entertainment purposes only, or whatever it says at the start. When it says that, you've got to start thinking. And I always say to people, when we do our investigations, we're out for 6 hours at a time or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And they have to condense that time into a 45-minute program, once you take out the ad breaks, and out of that 45 minutes. They've got the bit at the start where they're talking, they're telling you about the place. They've got a bit at the end where they're reviewing the evidence. So there's probably only like a 25-minute segment of actual investigation.
True.
So when you see activity, it looks like they're having stuff all night. It looks like they're having constant...
it's just one thing after another.
But it's 25 minutes worth of investigating that's,
that's
condensed.
Taken 6-7 hours to record.
Exactly. Now also, if they do happen to have a quiet night, we have quiet nights and we go home quite disappointed. If it does happen, we go home and we just shrug it off and we move on to the next one. If it happens for these guys, they lose viewers because people aren't entertained anymore. And if people aren't entertained and they switch off, then they potentially stand the risk of losing their job.
Of course.
And I guess they get paid well to be on the TV.
I would hope so.
Yeah. So, it's almost like I guess it's a catch-22. They want to hunt ghosts, but they want to keep their job. And I think at the point where a team or a group of people have to put entertaining an audience or a potential risk of losing money or their job, if they have to put that in front of actually finding evidence of the paranormal, then they become, I think their reliability and I guess their trustworthiness just goes down the drain.
Yeah. I mean, I think it was, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Most Haunted, where someone kicked a bucket. And you could physically see it.
It's on YouTube, so you can grab the video on YouTube.
And the thing is, no one owned up to it. It was on video, and it was claimed to be, at the time, something paranormal had happened. So when you see stuff like that, it does instantly make you doubt the whole thing. Yeah. It's just you just think, oh, this is just one big charade.
It's almost like the boy who cried wolf. Once you see something that's happened like that, you can never trust them again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's happened with ghost hunters. I mean, I assume most of our listeners will know of the infamous hood pull on the Halloween special. I think it was 2008 for ghost hunters, where Grant claimed to have his hood pulled. But again, there's extensive videos on YouTube where people have analysed it and slowed it down. And I firmly believe that he hoaxed that, and there was no paranormal activity whatsoever. And as you say, the second you start doing that, can you believe anything that happens to them?
I mean, even if there was stuff that was happening that was absolutely 100% genuine, you'd still be thinking, nah, it's fake.
Yeah.
Someone's throwing something at them, or someone's just knocking a wall somewhere or whatever.
Now, unfortunately, this overspills into the amateur area that we're obviously involved with. And that's kind of, not just in one way, but in many ways. We have guests come who, if after 10 minutes they haven't seen a possession and things flying off the shelf,
true.
They're ready to walk out because they're bored.
They're bored.
Yeah. Because, not only are we living in a generation where if they don't check Facebook every 5 minutes, they feel like the world's going to end. Yeah. But also because they're used to watching, these programs where bam, 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 it's thick and fast, it's all happening. And that's not what it's like. Ghost hunting is trying not to fall asleep at 1 a.m. And and you might hear one footstep in 6 hours and realise that it was someone going to the toilet.
Yeah.
And that's actually what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we've always stated at our ghost hunts that, you may not see anything, you may not experience anything, and that's just the way it is. If you do, great. But if you don't, we can't help it. We're not going to start faking stuff just for the entertainment of others. Yeah.
I mean, we've done spirit boards and the glass just doesn't move.
Yeah.
And you can see the disappointment in the guests' eyes, but, I always say to them, well, we're not faking it.
Mm-hmm.
And the other way that these TV programmes have affected the amateur world is that groups kind of have followed their lead in such as, in the UK particularly, there's 2 or 3 companies that pretty much dominate the paranormal investigating market, and I'm not going to name who they are, but if you're into this kind of thing, you'd
probably know, or you could easily find out.
Yeah, you'd know who they were, and chances are you've probably been on a couple of hunts with them. I have, and they're nationwide. They're almost like a franchise.
Yeah,
and again, they're making money out of it, significant amounts of money. I mean, they investigate locations that we investigate, so we know how much these locations cost, and how much you could realistically charge a paying guest. And when you see
see how much they're charging,
it kind of sinks you a little bit, because you think, wow, they must be making a killing.
Yeah.
And again, if they're charging sometimes nearly 3 times the amount that we would charge a customer, if they're charging that amount, they need to make sure that paying customer has a damn good time.
Yeah.
Because if they go home after 6 hours having spent a lot of money, they're going to be unhappy. In this day and age, it's a bad review on TripAdvisor or on Facebook. Word of mouth, and then they don't go back and they lose out on repeat business.
Yeah.
So what I've noticed with these kind of groups is they always have a resident medium who tells you how to feel, points you in the right direction, and stuff like that. But ultimately, again, you have to think: are they putting money and making money and their business, which is what it is, in front of actually searching for evidence? So I say, what's happened in the paranormal industry is it's taken 2 roads now. You have the research industry, and you have the entertainment industry. And the entertainment industry is your TV programs. It's these groups who are literally just in it to make money. They have like 16, 17 hunts going on around the country every weekend.
Yeah.
For extortionate prices. And I have been on on investigations with these people, and you know, I've had some quite good times. I've also seen some things that I thought were very doubtful. So it's not to say that they're all faking it. Please don't get us wrong here. You know, we're not, you know, digging into them and saying that everything's fake. What I'm saying is, as a paying customer or as someone with an interest in this field, as you listeners will be, you need to have that thought process in your mind that, you know, what are they getting from this? Mm-hmm. What am I getting from this? And what are they putting at the forefront of their interests, really?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't want to go to. It's the equivalent of paying £10 for a cinema ticket and then going and sitting in the screen and not watching anything.
Yeah,
you'd be so disappointed.
Yeah.
If I was paying like £60-70 or whatever to go on one of these investigations, I'd want to see something. Yeah. I'd want to feel something.
Yeah, and unfortunately, they make sure that you do, don't they? You know. Yeah. So yeah. Of course, we want your feedback on this topic. Like I say, it's a very controversial topic. I've had some heated debates about it over the past year or so. So please leave comments on the video feed, or email us, put it on Facebook or anything. Just give us some feedback on what you think about this, what your opinion is on this. And of course, if there's any good opinions, if there's anything interesting, we'll make sure we read it out on the next show.
We can always revisit the subject as well if there's enough controversy around it.
Definitely. We'll that'll be interesting, to kind of come back into it again and go deep into it, because I think it's really important actually that, you know, because it's the future of the investigative world, and it's where's it gonna go. So we need to be careful with it, and we need to have a close eye on it. So give us some feedback on that, and I guess now we'll go into our interview with Eva, and we hope you enjoy it. And here's Eva Vennari. Welcome to the show, Eva.
I'm so happy to be here.
How are you doing? Have you been keeping well?
Yes, been keeping well. I have, yeah.
Good stuff. So I'm really dead keen to kind of jump straight in, because I've heard you on the Secret Door podcast, which is Melissa's show, and it really piqued my interest. You know, the topic of conversation and how having a healthy body and a well-conditioned body can kind of help with the spirituality side of things. So just want to tell us a bit about yourself and you know, your kind of progress to get to where you are now?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I live in Los Angeles, in the Rome of our day, if you will, and there's no bigger melting pot for many things. And born and raised here, you get exposure to all kinds of interesting experiences.
Very well said.
I'm not normally known for being politically correct, but I just want to be nice.
You're on the right show then.
Good. So yeah, I was raised without any knowledge of the spirit world, really. I'm a Reformed Catholic, if you will, and had to kind of give up a lot of my belief systems about life, about how spirit world worked and all of that. So anyways, over a period of time, I realized that my belief systems were impacting my health, and it didn't really put two and two together until much later. It took most of my life, but having a much easier time with it now, having expanded my experience. So what got me sick, in addition to the belief systems, was not really having a good handle on my health. So by the time I was 20 years old, I was told, well, Eva, you're infertile, 21 rather. I had miscarried, and then shortly after getting married, I miscarried, and then it took a while for us we kept trying to have a child, and just did not happen. So I was told, oh, you have chronic fatigue, and you have insomnia and depression and anxiety and itchy skin and heart palpitations and blah. I mean, the list goes on and on. I could depress you with. It's a 30 some odd different symptom list that developed over time, and felt very, very blocked. So it took a lot of life experiences. I say with a very teasing manner now that wisdom comes from making mistakes. Well, I'm very wise.
And modest.
Yes. So yeah, it was that kind of ongoing making mistakes, and then oh my God, I made another mistake, and it's the same mistake over and over again, and I found myself in a list of cycles, and finally caught wind that they all many of them came down to some core issues, some core ideas and ideologies that I had to adjust. So, and that started my health journey. It really did.
Okay, so when you talk about illnesses, because I mean, there's a lot of people around the world that have exactly what you've just described there. You know, the fatigue, the itchy skin, and the general, you know, just feeling down in the dumps all the time. And
Yep.
and is that do you know what made you like that? I mean, was it just, you know, chance? Was it something that you were doing in your life? Was it your choice of diet? Was it things like that were having an effect? Or
Oh, yes to all of them. And it's crazy. We you think about how people are often addicted to sugar or caffeine, right?
yeah,
We stand in line to get our coffee 1, 2, 3 times a day sometimes, and think nothing of it. Oh, I need my fix. I'm gonna go get it. And this burns you out. It destroys the whole adrenal system. Not to mention you get hooked on the sugar because I don't know very many people who drink coffee black anymore. I mean, it's the
yeah,
dessert these days, the
yeah,
frappuccino of sorts, cappuccino and everything else. So there's this addiction to sugar, and that controls you. That is a an addiction. It is real, man, and it's communication. Your body's chemistry is saying, "I need you to go get me," and that urge to do something is not deniable. And people go out and they find themselves binge shopping. They go out for one thing and they come back with a box of cookies and the
yeah,
ice cream
yeah,
and
yeah,
popcorn, and then you're both going guilty. Yeah, and you think, oh, I'm just gonna eat 1 or 2 cookies, and then next thing you know, what box of cookies? And you're hiding it behind your back or putting it in the trash before anybody else sees it. And it's just real. So it's controlling you. And that's one aspect of it. And then in doing those types of things, the habit of letting yourself get to the place where it's not okay, but it's like a guilty, I can't even say it's a guilty pleasure because it's not something you're going to gain from. But at some point in time, all of those symptoms that I was mentioning, they become real. They become forefront until you can't really be productive in life, because of those things. And now you're focused on that. So it affects not only your physical health, your mental health, and then it goes into your financial health because, oops, you can't be productive, you can't work, you can't keep your focus, you're not taking care of your kids, you're not, you know what I mean? It's like your relationships go downhill.
yeah.
Like, wow, but this is depressing. It can be. Yeah. And then what you're talking about, that morose feeling, how do you get that? So here's something that I discovered doing the work that I do so I analyze hair, and it comes down to relationship of minerals in the body. And those relationships of minerals, that's chemistry. So just as I was describing the sugar craze
Yeah,
of
yeah.
you're being focused on it, right? So do toxic metals speak to you and nutritional imbalances, for example. Many people, it's prolific here. We have, and even there, I have a lot of clients who are there in London, and they also seem to have this copper toxicity thing going on, and it controls you. It can create anger, anxiety at a minimum, for men who ever wonder what it's like to have PMS. Well, guess what? If you have copper toxicity, you've got a good idea.
Yeah.
So yes, those nutritional imbalances, they can affect your personality, they can affect how you're showing up in the world, they can affect your overall health and your ability to perform. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I mean, I just want to kind of go back a bit there because
Yeah.
when you talk about the how we get hooked on sugar and all of these, and I guess that it's all a form of energy, isn't it? You know, we're always looking for that upper because we're always on a downer.
Yes.
And is it possible, I would argue that it is, that we live in a society that asks far too much of us as a species, you know, to work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, to maintain a family, and all these pressures that are on us from a society that we live in, almost forces us to have to drink or eat, you know, these kind of, I guess, sugary treats to keep our energy levels up, just to enable us to get through, you know, each day as it comes. It's almost like a vicious cycle because then, as you say, if you start taking all this stuff, then you become less productive, so then you're not working, and that was the reason you were doing it anyway, so you could keep working, and it becomes this kind of catch-22.
It's a great conversation, and it's huge. You're saying you're preaching to the choir. This is how conversations often start with individuals that I work with, because they are complaining about, oh my God, I can't seem to shut my brain off. I've got too much to work on. My poor kids never see me. My spouse, I can't seem to spend the time with them. So yes, and we are too much is expected of us. And going back to our original conversation, this comes down to boundaries. We need to learn to say no better, and self-love better. This is part of what I've come to know as we shift our conversation with my clients when it comes to these symptoms. It starts out with that because the frustration is real. You know, when you're out and about and you're at a social event, you're not working. So what do you talk about? Things that aren't working for you. So that usually is relationships.
Yeah.
And you overhear it all the time. Baseball games, you go out to a concert, and the couple in front of you or behind you, they're either fighting, or there's two guys and two girls that are talking about each other's, prospective partners. I can't believe she did this or did that. We complain about what's frustrating us. So I hear those things when I'm out and about. And the other thing I hear is about my body's not working right, and here's what's going on. I went to the doctor and they said everything's fine, but I really don't feel good. So we have all of these pressures that are placed on us, an inability to say no, or we think there's an inability to say no. But what it comes down to is this: I need better boundaries. And that was my downfall. I was raised kind of without my own boundaries. I was raised to do what my parents wanted me to do to make them happy. And that's not healthy boundaries. That's codependency. So going back to what I like to wrap that part up is we have this conversation around the symptoms to begin with. Everything is a symptom, is a complaint. So when I hear those frustrations, I think, oh, this is an opportunity to help somebody gain self-love. And that's what it comes down to, because ultimately the conversation switches from those symptoms, because at some point they stop being a reality and they become a point of history. They become a memory. And the next conversation that we're having on, when I work with people over time, it becomes the inner conversation in and around self-love. What is that conversation? And it's usually about self-worth, values, not knowing when to say no, when's too much, when's too little, when is it okay to listen to other people over yourself, which never. So, but we're conditioned, aren't we? We're conditioned from childhood. Do what makes other people happy, and this gets us into trouble.
Yeah.
Gets us into trouble. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's try and steer it more towards the paranormal then.
Yes.
So obviously you had this ill health, and then you had this. I mean, was it one huge experience, one huge incident that happened, or was it many smaller incidents that happened, or?
Well, kind of like when Cortez's ships were first seen, people thought they were clouds.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
We don't know what we're looking at until the awareness is present. So I think that as I became more aware, I was then able to identify what was paranormal and what was just unseen before, and I think we live in oblivion. We live in absolute. I really don't know what's going on around me a lot of times until all of a sudden we have a moment where it's so blatantly clear this is not normal, it's paranormal. So then your awareness gets bumped up a little bit. And for me, it wasn't just one, although I did have my awareness was, oh no, that's not anything that I need to pay attention to. That the paranormal became very real for me, and it was a huge moment. And then it was a progressive moment from there.
Okay. So do you want to tell us about any of the incidents that you had, any other, because as you may or may not know, but we investigate, locations as a paranormal team. So
Awesome.
we're dead interested in any ghost stories you've got for us, or what happened to you.
Oh man, ghost stories have been my hobby from as time as I can remember. And my dad used to tell me, he's like, "Oh Eva, there's no such thing as ghosts," and I'd walk away going, "Well, what am I talking to then?"
Yeah.
I don't know who those people are.
Yeah, I often wonder, are the people we're dealing with every day, are they the ghosts, so to speak, and the ghosts are the real people?
Yeah, just living in a little bit different awareness. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yeah, and it wasn't. So I as a child, I had an awareness, but then I turned it off because, well, when you're Catholic and you have my father say things like, "There's no such thing as ghosts," I had a pleasing personality, so I'm like, all right, well maybe this is true. Maybe I should just ignore it. And then my ill health kept me from being in touch with it. And it wasn't until I was about I was in my mid 30s, and my kids were younger teenagers, so they were just going from that adolescence and into the teenagers. And had a difficult moment with my older daughter, and it left, like you said, everything's energy, and it left this energy resonance in her bedroom that was after this big fight, this fallout we had. And it was just this like a black hole type of energy. It was very strange. Now, I can't say that the energy is there because of the space. Like when you hear paranormal issues or ghosts that haunt, usually that's because of it's a recurring recording, that's just playing over and over at a specific place. This seemed to follow her, like wherever she went, except for in this one moment. Because she always thought she was hearing voices. And I thought, oh no, maybe she's schizophrenic. And being Catholic, and I'm thinking, all right, this child of mine, she's hearing voices, that I need to get her psychological help.
Yeah.
Right. So that was my thinking at that time, until she's out of the house and I'm in her bedroom and sitting on her bed, close my eyes, and I'm about a foot or two away from the wall behind me. She's got one of those, or she did at the time, the day bed. It looks like a couch by day, and then you undo everything and it becomes a bed.
We call those sofa beds, I guess.
Sofa beds, kind of, yeah. Right. Yeah. So it's a long way up against the wall, basically. So she had up against the wall a couple of paintings, pictures, in a frame. And my back is turned to that wall, and I'm sitting cross-legged on her bed, and I'm in prayer. I decided, I'm going to learn more. I'm going to find out what's going on with whatever I need to hear. I didn't even know what I was looking for. It was just kind of like this moment of what I'm doing right now and what I've been doing is not working. I need to find something different. So I looked for an opening. And I think it was that invitation of, let me seek something new and different, that allowed for this experience to happen. So I'm sitting there in bed and I'm praying. And I don't remember what went through my mind. All I know is that I felt one of the paintings fly off the wall and hit me in the head, and it landed on the bed behind me. Remember, I'm a foot or two away, right?
Yeah.
So that's physical movement. That's definitely paranormal. You don't get that from that's a lot of energy it takes to move.
Yeah.
So that was very scary in the moment. And what did I do? Being a Catholic at the time, I called my priest. Hey, what is going on? Do you need to come in and do something? Bless the house. And he's like, hey, this was very interesting. I stepped away from the Catholic religion for many reasons, but this one priest, he seemed to have an idea that was different than my father about what it meant to be Catholic. And he says to me, he goes, there's something in this energy, whatever it is, it's trying to communicate with you. Don't try so hard to shut it down.
Yeah.
And I went, okay, this is new. That's different. I wish I'd had that type of, encouragement years ago. I mean, I would have been along my path a lot sooner, earlier, different, but whatever. This was where I was at the time. I just tiptoed forward and decided, okay, if this is something that's trying to communicate with me, then I must be safe. I must be safe to do so. And that one moment, years later, turned into a realization that when you have a paranormal situation, not 100% of the time, but for me, this was the case. I was pushing energies away from me and trying to omit parts of who I was. And that energy was trying to capture my attention. And the only way that it could was to take a picture off the wall and hit me over the head with it.
Yeah.
So it was an unincorporated part of me. That's what I found. I didn't feel like it was something that was left behind from the spirit world, from my daughter, or from
So it's
the
almost
argument.
like you created the energy that
yes.
moved the painting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so that's an interesting concept, actually. Because we've been talking recently about how is our spirits or paranormal activity a manifestation of the experiencer? Are they is the person experiencing it manifesting it in their own mind? I guess that kind of plays into what you're saying there. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, it's what I have found, and not 100% of the time does it have to be true, because there are multiple reasons why objects could move in our space, But that for me was when I came to that place of understanding, I immediately had the coherence. So what I thought about it, what I felt about it, just to my core, I was like, that feels right. There was a knowing there. I went, okay, got it. That is a grounded message for me. It feels that you have that gut instinct that says, yes, that's true. So for me, it was about not being able to incorporate and having a block on that idea. I've watched others doing the work that I do in nutritional balancing, and just talking to people about mental illness, because people think they're mentally ill. You've heard of the Mad Hatter. Mad Hatter becomes mad over time because he uses mercury right, exactly, enters into the hands, and then ultimately into the brain, and causes a person to have mental illness. And it's been thought for years that it's irreversible, but it's not completely irreversible. It can be helped. But I've seen people diagnosed as schizophrenic, and because they have the ability, the sight, to see these multidimensional beings, whether it be, sometimes they're seen as ghostly figures. Sometimes they're seen as bats, flying around at the feet, or as clouds that are kind of black and ominous nearby. And because of the lack of communication between religions and psychologists and people in the spirit community like us, the consciousness community, there's no collaboration, which I'm really trying to fix.
Yeah.
There needs to be a collaboration.
Good luck with that. Yeah.
Well, I'm making some headway. It's a little bit, and putting the bug in the ear, so to speak, saying, okay, what if this idea exists, that if a person really isn't schizophrenic, but simply their belief system about, look, you must be schizophrenic because there's no such thing as paranormal. There's no such thing as ghostly figures. There's no such thing as demons, or as whatever you want to say that can be seen, which is so many things, elementals. Those beings, if they're being seen by somebody and they don't have any other technological explanation for it, they think they're crazy, and everybody else thinks they're crazy too, which I think is a travesty.
Yeah, I mean, do you think there's a possibility, again, something we've spoke about before, I think we've spoke about on the show, Ben will remind me, that you always see that someone who's religious will always see religious figures. So someone who's a devout Christian will always have a vision of the Virgin Mary, for example.
Right.
Or if you're a Muslim, you might see Allah. And then if you're big into things like Bigfoot, you're always going to come across Bigfoot. You will see a Bigfoot. And
it goes back to that whole manifestation.
So it's the manifestation. So is it possible that what these people are experiencing, though on the face of it, it's different experiences? Is it possible that once you strip away the illusory universe, so to speak, and we're left with nothing more than the coding, is what they're experiencing the same paranormal phenomenon? It's just that their mind and their belief system is interpreting it how they want to see it.
Yeah, the clouds for Cortez's ships were the sails. I mean, exactly. Exactly. And that's not true all the time, because there are actually multi-dimensional figures that do have a form, but it is translated through the technology of our own understanding, just like you said, technology of the time. It's like the burning bush. What was it? In today, if you talk to a lot of the spiritual community, not religious community, but spiritual community, and they talk about what people saw, how Moses saw the burning bush, it looked like how today is described an angel, not a bush, but it's just that it's such a high frequency of energy that it looks like light is so bright it looks like fire.
Yeah. I can get that. I mean, you're almost buying into, I guess, like the ancient astronaut theory there. I don't know if you're familiar with that,
Yes,
like ancient aliens, and how, like, I guess I've always said that angels were given wings because in the ancient civilizations they never saw a plane, or they didn't know that these things could fly. So in order
the only things that they could see that flew were birds.
So they gave these beings wings to explain to future generations these
That
things
they
could
flew.
fly.
Yeah, because
Right.
you always see depictions of angels with like wings that have feathers.
Have feathers, just like
Yeah.
a bird.
Like a bird wing.
Yeah.
Right,
And that doesn't mean that
exactly.
they had wings and flew themselves. It just meant they had the capability of flight, whether that be through a craft or a spaceship or whatever.
Oh yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
they talk about the Vimana,
the Vimana,
right?
in Mahabharata and stuff like that. I mean,
Yep.
that's a fascinating concept.
Yep.
Okay, fine. So that you had the experience with the painting hitting on the back of the head. I mean, that's vastly more than I've ever experienced. And
Well, shoot, we should
I do this on a weekly basis. So maybe I should just stop trying so hard, and I should next time we go somewhere there's a painting.
Come on, hit me.
Yeah. see what we can get. So did that then lead to more? Because at this point, I guess you've kind of gone, oh, hang on a minute, something's going on here. The priest you spoke to has kind of said, open up to it. Don't close it down. And then did that kind of bring on a foray of experiences?
Well, it was interesting. I had a correlation with, because about the same time is when I found the information about nutritional balancing. My symptoms had become so severe that I could not function. So I finally found I was, blessed with that insomnia up at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I had taken all of those, the search string of all of my different symptoms, and I came up with nutritional balancing. And so I started doing that for myself. And as I did, the experiences started to become, so as I became more if you want to call it elementally strong, so my body became healthier over time. My gifts, if you will, the ability to see energies in alternate dimensions, were magnified. And I'm not the only one. I found out. I'm like, oh, this is actually common, just not very spoken. And
Okay.
I say, why isn't it spoken about? If we have these gifts and abilities to see things and translate them, and use them for healing or whatever else we need to use them for, then why not talk about it? It is weird. It absolutely is weird, but I'm not the only one, so I'm okay talking about it.
I think the problem is these days that it's, and you talk about these people that have schizophrenia and they're pushed down a certain route that you've got schizophrenia. I mean, if Jesus was around nowadays claiming to be the Son of God, he'd be locked up in a padded cell,
Yes,
with bipolar or something. So it's one of those where I guess, I mean, what we describe as paranormal is paranormal because it's outside of the normal.
Yeah.
But the problem is our normal box is so small that it doesn't allow us to explore anything outside the paranormal. And again, that's the society that we live in. If they can't explain it with science or the science that they stick to, then they just ignore it. Oh, we can't explain it, so we ignore it. And I think that's why a lot of people don't talk about it, and that might be why a lot of people not suffer, but kind of have these experiences alone and don't really know where to take it, what to do with it, or...
Yeah, I think it goes back to that whole sort of like being conditioned thing as you get older. I mean, people say that animals can sense things, and even young kids can sense things because they haven't been closed off to that yet. But as they get older, like you just said, they're told, no, that's not real, this is real, look at this, do that, ignore the rest.
Yeah.
And that's what you get.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. There's that space in which a child is born that they have the ability to see. If you ever watched a baby or a pet, you're playing with them, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, squirrel, that kind of attention shifts, and their head turns, and they're looking at space. To you don't see anything, but to them, they're paying attention to something, and you just can't see it with your own eyes because we've turned all that off. But babies have the ability to see loved ones, angels, guides. They can see all of those energies that, as they're brought into the world, the veil hasn't completely been closed off for them. So a lot of people talk about that.
I think you're touching on basically my strongest subject there. I mean, I've kind of written a book about this, and I do presentations on it, and how we live in a universe where we only see 0.05% of the light spectrum, what we call visible light, and we don't see things such as infrared or stuff like that. And that's right. There are animals that can see into that spectrum. So when they're looking into the corner of the room and you can't see anything, they probably are looking at something. It's just that we can't see it.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. And we have, just like we have the 5 physical senses, we have 5 spiritual senses. And they can be exercised, just like going to the gym and working out a muscle. You can build those. And so I was at, I do a lot of networking, and one of the networking circles is the Holistic Chamber of Commerce, which I think you guys have. You have
We
chapters
have a
there.
chamber of commerce. Yeah.
Well, it's it's the Holistic Chamber of Commerce, as opposed to the city's Chamber of Commerce, whichever city it is.
Yeah.
And the Holistic Chamber, they host a speaker to come in, and then the other healers or people who have heart-centered businesses that want to collaborate with the healers, they come to these meetings. And one of the meetings was about medical intuitive and how to be one, and what it's all about. And I knew nothing about it, and was listening to the speaker. She was talking about different experiences, and you say people don't talk about it because you're considered strange. She started talking about, ooh, strange stuff, and I went, hey, I have had those experiences. And so she's asked the room, she goes, most of us have clairvoyance. And she says, how many of you see something in your mind's eye, and you know it's not your imagination, it is something that's coming outside, from outside of you, and you receive it as information, and you know that it's not yours, it's not your conjuring, it's just something you see they call it the theater of your mind, right? So everybody raised their hand, like the whole room. Clairvoyance. Okay, great. So then she went down the line, and she says most people have a really strong that, and then they might have one other, clairaudient. You hear things, you hear the voices, you hear, like my daughter, or you have the ability to translate information into thought. And I raised my hand, but the number of hands raised was significantly less. And she said, yeah, most people have a secondary. And then she went through all 5 of the physical senses as a spiritual sense to match them up. I was the only one that had all 5. And I went, oh, that's really interesting. So I've been addressed by different spirits as they come into my vicinity, my physical realm. I can sometimes smell a perfume or taste one of their famous foods. My grandmother used to make this blueberry pie, and one time all of a sudden I knew she was around because I could taste the blueberry pie.
Yeah.
My grandmother.
That's quite common. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's a big one. And then I've had others. So it's like there's all these different senses that we have, and we dismiss, thinking, oh, it's just a memory. It's just no, we're actually experiencing something in the moment, and it's okay to not dismiss it and to celebrate the moment, and not call ourselves crazy for it.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned before, like, your diet affected how you were feeling, that sort of thing. And we've discussed in the past, like, what we eat and drink might affect how we feel things on an investigation, that sort of thing. So what do you think is, like, a good, I don't know how to put it, like, how would you say a good diet is to be able to focus more on this sort of thing?
Oh, yeah. Everybody can benefit from a diet, or I should say a framework. I hate the word diet. I think there's so much wrapped around that word, but a framework of ideas. Say it's very simple: vegetables that are cooked, and that way it's easier to digest. You're going to get a lot of minerals out of them. Those minerals are what your body craves. And protein. There's a lot of controversy everywhere around eating animals. If it's for you, great, eat that protein. If it's not, then eat other protein. But where we get into trouble is when we add too much carbs. That gives us the whole the foggy thinking, the inability to concentrate, can't pull words out of our memory that we've known for our whole lives, and all of a sudden, like, we leave one room, go into the next, and forget why we're in there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Sorry, I forgot what I was saying then.
Right? Sugar does that. But yeah, of cooked vegetables, and a good variety of them, lots of colors. People are big on the raw diet, but it's harder for a fatigued body. If we've never been so stressed and so pressured and so pushed and so advertised to any time ever, as far as I'm aware. And we're so stressed out and tired and depleted. It's too hard for our digestive tract to try to break down raw food. Usually people eat the raw food and they think that they're doing well. Oh, I ate my raw food, I ate really good. And then they're spending the rest of the afternoon belching, or other things. So it causes a little bit of distraction there. And the cooked vegetables, they digest much more easily, and the body likes it more. And you'll notice an alertness to your thinking powers, your ability to put things together and organize and project manage will go a lot faster.
And then that, I guess, in turn leads to better experiences of paranormal. I mean, if you practice, for me, I practice a lot of meditation and stuff like that, and I find that helps me, kind of tune my
Amazing.
body.
Yeah, because people say, oh, do meditation. Like if you can't meditate for 5 minutes, do 10. That's the joke. But
Yeah,
a lot of people that come to me that work with me, Eva, I can't do 5 minutes of meditation. My brain won't let me. And that's a state of stress that our body's kept in. Is this I call it sympathetic dominance. It's just all the time you're on, can't shut the brain off. And people try to use force of will, their own willpower to overcome it, and it's just not enough. And then comes with that not being able to do it. Oh, I'm not good enough. I don't know how to do this. I must be stupid. I must be different. Whatever the story is, we put ourselves down for not being able to do it. But when you get your body to a place where the cortisol levels, that adrenaline problem isn't there, the sugar need isn't there, and you start giving your body the minerals that it needs from cooked vegetables and a good quality protein, it's amazing how the ability to meditate for 5 minutes becomes a breeze.
yeah, yeah. I can
Yeah.
see how that happens. I
Yeah.
mean, as Ben touched on, we find that we have people come on investigations with us, and they're drinking like 2 cans of energy drink right before they go on an investigation, and then
Not
2 hours later they're wondering why they've got a migraine or why their heart's
Pounding.
racing. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that they
Or
the
they
amount
bought
of
like
people.
a bag of sweets to
Or they've
snack
bought
on
a bag
all
of
night.
sweets that they're eating, and they just go, oh, is this paranormal because my heart's racing? And it's like, no, you just drank 2 Red Bulls in like half hour. So that's
It's like
exactly what it is.
it's like being too close to what's that, the electrical outlet, the whole the EMF fields, right? The electromagnetic fields. They
Yeah,
can give you
yeah.
the feeling of things being off too. It's like, no, you're just overexposed to EMFs, which are everywhere. So I mean, it's all part of the awareness. You raise your awareness, then you have an experience, then it allows you to look around with a different set of eyes so that you can rule out the obvious and go, oh, that's what you guys do. You do that, right? This is what you have to do. You have to be very almost scientific about following up on leads. What seemed to be paranormal is actually just somebody left the light.
That's
circuit.
yeah. I mean, that's what we do. I mean, first off, for the listeners, if you can hear rain fall while we're talking, it is raining quite heavily on the top of my roof now. So
I
that's
do hear it.
that's what you're going to
It's
hear.
probably going to pick it up quite well as well.
Hopefully you can still hear us, but
Yes.
it is absolutely pouring it down. We did check the weather forecast, and it wasn't supposed to rain until another hour. So sorry about that, but I can't. There's nothing I can do about that. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, we almost go into investigations to disprove ghosts, and I know that sounds quite kind of backwards, but we go into it to disprove it, because if you go into it in order to prove, then everything that you experience is a ghost. So those heart palpitations is a ghost. Someone's belly rumbling at 1:30 in the morning is a ghost. And someone snoring in the corner that we get quite a lot. That's a ghost.
Yeah.
And if you're there to disprove it, then although it's quite boring and it's not as exciting as taking the other angle, it's the best angle to take in order to get the best evidence.
Well, yeah, because like if you get to a point and you go, well, I don't know what that is. You've tried to disprove it. You can't figure out. You go, okay, maybe that's paranormal.
And even then, it's just maybe.
Because of course.
You might wake up the next morning and think, oh, hang on, that it could have been that. And so even then, it's a maybe. But I'm sure you know this, Eva, that it's very personal, and experiencing a paranormal experience is I always say that to people, is very, very personal. And if you're seeing a figure, or if you're feeling something, just because the person stood right next to you isn't seeing it or feeling it, it doesn't mean that it's not real.
Exactly. And part of the reason why my confidence is so high on that muscle, if you will, is nice and strong, and I'm able to talk about it, is because I've been blessed with some beautiful people around me who have taken me on, I guess you can call them spiritual journeys, and we would debrief. Here's what I saw, here's what I saw, or we would experience it together and describe it as we go. We're seeing the same things, just from a different perspective, as if we were in different parts of the same room, watching the stage. And it's that kind of open and honest conversation where we could bring something up and go, oh no, I don't see that, but I see it this way. And then the other person saying, oh, but I see it also that way, or I see it however, so that you can realize what you're seeing is real. That has been so important for me, and it allows me to bring in this whole spiritual side to my business, so that we're now from remote places, no matter where you are in the world, if you're feeling something in your body that's off, whether it's a chakra center or a grounding cord that's not quite right, or you feel like there's meridian lines that aren't working. I mean, with these gifts, you can have the ability to do that remotely in a multidimensional space and use that for healing. It doesn't just have to be for, is it a ghost? There's more. There's so much more to this world. So that's been the fun and the challenge in bringing it into a nutritional science business. It's been very interesting for me to do this. It's kind of scary, stepping off a ledge and going, I don't know if this is going to work, but here's my hobby, and I'm going to make it my healing practice too.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my next question for you would be, where do you plan on taking it? Because not many people, in fact, I've never come across anyone that's linked these kind of subjects together like you have, and it does work, and well done for doing it. But where do you see it going now? What's your plan? What's your plan on? You say you want to bring the different societies together. You want people to try and understand it better. Where do you see yourself in a year, or sound like a job interview? But where do you see yourself in a year or two? Where do you see it progressing?
Yeah, there is a wonderful conversation that is just budding, and that is between myself and other healers. And my business actually developed because I received a vision of it over a period of time in that space, as you are just waking up from sleep but haven't opened your eyes, so you're not quite thinking about the mistakes you made yesterday or thinking about your to-do list for today. You just have that moment of peace right before you open your eyes. And so for 5 years, over a period of time, every so often, I received a download in that space of time where it gave me a little vision. This is your business. This is what it's going to look like. And it started off with that one-on-one interaction with my clients. Here, we're going to do your hair test. We're going to figure out what's going on with you and get you feeling better and move on. And then move it into groups, which that's where I'm at now. And just recently, it's expanded to a place where the last puzzle piece, if you will, of this grand vision was to network together the healing centers of the world. There's so many of them they're beautiful and they're underutilized, and they grand opening, next thing you know, they're being remade into a hotel. So there's something going on here, right? And I thought, what a loss. And I would love to network them together, kind of like a timeshare. That's the goal. And so I developed a new company called Illumination Tours, and we are taking individuals in groups to sacred sites all over the world, to these healing centers, so that we can open the doors of consciousness for this kind of thinking, so that when you go to ancient cities or even to your own home, you can see things with a different awareness, and bring all that back into your own world. And that's my next step. So it's not just one-on-one consultations. It's not just group retreats. We're talking about changing the way people look at the lens through which they view their life. And that's the goal.
Okay, well, that sounds, I'd be dead keen on coming somewhere like I don't know, a spiritual site for me, like Machu Picchu or whatever it's called. I'd love to go somewhere like that and experience.
Something like that would be really good to see.
That would be great.
Experience.
Yeah. Love to have you.
Well, I'd have to save up hell of a lot of money. But so I'd have to give the baby back.
I don't take firstborns. Yeah, I'm done with that.
So another question I was going to ask you was what is your stance on like crystals, like healing crystals, and that sort of thing?
Yeah. So this is cool. I'm going to back up for a second to answer that. I spent 16 years as an architectural rep selling natural stone to architects and designers all over the greater Los Angeles area for projects all over the world. Well, as you know, stones, in natural stone, they have mineral makeup. It's crystals inside the stone. And when I'm talking about stone, I mean like countertop, slab, floor for the outside, the wall cladding on a building, anything, right? And I decided, crystals are awesome. I think they have a great value to them. Some people are sensitive to the energies of them, others are not. And because I'm vocal and willing to ask questions that others are not, as you can tell,
Yeah.
I was exposed to a lot of architects and designers and asked them the question. So I don't know if you can. I would put a stone in their hand, a little 4x4 sample. I said, what do you feel when you hold that? And some of them would be like, well, it feels cold. and others would have a little bit more variance to it. And I was like, oh, this has a nice warmth even though physically it was cold, it has this warmth to it. And I feel like, gosh, this feels like a sauna, or it feels like, it has a quality for healing. So there were some that had the healing, or I should say the ability to sense into the stones, and others did not. So how do I feel about crystals? Same way. And so I smushed the two ideas together, and I had a showroom that I developed a couple of years back before I went full-time into the Elevate Institute, which is my business now. I was working for a stone company developing a whole new brand, and we brought in semi-precious stone slabs. And I suggested to the designers, I says, this can be a personal journey for your client. Why don't you find out what's going on with them before you start to design around a pretty picture? If they're having, for example, nightmares, difficult time sleeping, why not make some end tables out of some amethyst slabs, or a backboard, the headboard out of it, or maybe something else, rather than just taking a piece of crystal that's opened up and made into a beautiful statue of some kind for us to put on a nightstand. Why not make furniture out of this so that we're always around it? And I started that here in Los Angeles. It was an idea that initially got the eyebrow raise, and then went to, this is really cool. So
So do you think there's a lot to be said for the makeup of a building, how it's built, the materials that are used, even if it's not crystal,
absolutely.
the materials that are used in a building, and how that can affect how people feel that are within the building, and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, there was an experience. Part of my healing journey was discovering sick buildings. I don't know if you've heard of those, but in the 1970s or so, they used to build the buildings so airtight that they could not circulate air very well, and they're now called sick buildings. Well, I had the pleasure of working in one for 3 years, and my health declined so greatly during that time. It seemed like if anybody else was sick, I was sick too, regardless of how well I washed my hands, covered my face. It was just the lack of circulation. And then to go to the energy level of a building and how it's laid out, you've heard of feng shui.
Yeah.
So how well people communicate, how well you can concentrate on your job. If the lighting is fluorescent instead of incandescent or natural lighting, you end up with health problems. If you sit for too long, now they have those adjustable height desks where you can stand throughout the day. And I do a lot of corporate wellness training where I talk about that. It's like, you have one of those standing desks? Oh, yeah, raising their hands. I have one. Do you know how to use it? And they're all looking like, what do you mean? You're supposed to know how to use something? There's a method to this? Yes, there is. You mean you just don't stand at it all day? I'm like, no, you'll end up with varicose veins. You need to sit and stand, and there's a rotation to that. So there's a lot of conversation to be had around, what is a building made of? Where are the materials coming from? Do you have off-gassing from them? Being in the construction industry for so long, having exposure to these different ideas, they all come into my business. The health understanding, how it impacts us physically, spiritually, mentally, all of that. It's all related.
Yeah, I mean, you talk there about people, how they work, and it's just, again, it's the society, isn't it? They don't. They just think, oh, it's just doing its job. They don't think that they have to put an effort into it, or, they don't research, how to look after themselves properly. They buy a piece of equipment and they expect to just be better, or to just do it for them. So hang on, right. you do have to move around, and you should probably read the instructions and stuff, because you're gonna get no benefit from it whatsoever.
Yeah, they're like, oh yeah, I sit at my standing desk. Great. You just got a higher seat. That's awesome.
Right, okay, so we'll start wrapping it up now. I mean, do you have any, we always ask people like yourself who are into kind of the healing and that kind of thing, do you have any tips for our listeners, anything that they can focus on to help improve their health, to help improve their spirituality? Have you got any advice that could get them going?
Yeah, other than eating your vegetables, I would say a cup of cooked vegetables at 2 meals a day is most awesome. That will help significantly. But the other one that seems to be standing out is sleep. People get sleep wrong. And for that hour right before going to bed, I always recommend letting the brain know that it's time for sleep, because you rejuvenate when you're sleeping. And when you're overtired, your imagination runs wild.
Yep.
and you think you're being visited, but really you're just tired.
You're just tired,
yeah. But yeah, if take an hour before going to bed, shut off the TV, shut off the phone. Don't even sleep with your cell phone at least 10 feet away from you, if not in another room. Let it charge. It'll be there when you get up in the morning. Turn your lights down. They don't have to be off. But use that time for the meditation and get yourself into a routine for going to bed, and you'd be amazed at, one, how much better you sleep. You wake up feeling more refreshed and better than when you went to sleep at night, rather than the reverse. And the things that bother us during the day or we become sensitive to we become less sensitized, because we have now more energy from that night of good night's sleep. And it's a simple thing. It's something's grandmother's wisdom. We think, as we get older, we don't need to do that stuff. But you do. You still have a body. You still got to take care of it.
Yeah, that's sound advice. And where can our listeners reach you if they wanted to talk to you, if they wanted to get in touch? Have you got a website? Have you got an email address or anything they can contact you on?
I do. Yeah, the best way to reach out is on the web. I have a website. It's theelevateinstitute.com. That's THE. Don't forget the THE at the beginning. So theelevateinstitute.com. And on the homepage, you'll find an opportunity. If you feel like some of the things I've mentioned match your symptoms, without giving blood or your firstborn, you can take a questionnaire and find out if you possibly have imbalances that are leading you astray. And it's just a 20 question on the spot, tells you what's going on with you, and what my recommendations are will be emailed to you right after you take that test.
I might do that. You might get a questionnaire filled in tomorrow by me and Ben.
Got it.
God,
I'll look for it.
I dread to think what my recommendations would be.
Give up.
Yeah. Sit in a dark room for 10 years. Wow. Okay, that's great. Well, I've really enjoyed that, Eva, and thank you ever so much for coming on. And
yeah, it's been really interesting.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you. Great conversation.
I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully as your projects progress and you get these businesses going and you get these ideas going, we'd love to have you back on to have a little bit of a catch up and to see how it's progressing, and hopefully it won't be raining.
Well, I already have a progress on one. The Illumination Tours, we have our very first tour, if you don't mind a quick talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. Sure.
Our very first one's going to be in Peru. We're going to go to Machu Picchu, and it's not going to just be hey, there's Machu Picchu, right? We're going to be looking at masculine and feminine energies and sacred geometry, how they were used in the ancient civilizations. As we go to the ruins, remember, we're going to see things with a different viewpoint through a different filter. So we're going to be expressing and exploring those ruins all throughout the sacred valley with that knowledge, and then in trying to incorporate it into our own lives. And we're going through some healing processes as well, because it's myself and another healing practitioner that we've partnered up to do this. So it's going to be March. Towards the end of March of 2020. Love to be able to have people join us on that.
Yes, so is there a website that people can go to book up or to view future dates?
I am building the website today.
Okay.
Just go to theelevateinstitute.com and then shoot me a quick email. Say, hey, I'm interested in that Peru trip, and I'll catch them up.
Well, whoever goes, I'm extremely jealous of. I will certainly, please think of me changing nappies.
I just want to go to stroke an alpaca.
Yeah.
Right?
So
alpacas right there in our little area, and only us. It's exclusive. The resort is only for us while we're there, and we only have 20 seats available, and that's it.
Well,
wow.
Yeah.
More than that, sacred geometry and 2 alpacas.
Yep.
That's got to be worth the money. That's a lot. Right, listen, thank you, Eva. It's been fantastic, and please take care, and we'll definitely have you back on soon.
I can't wait.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Bye.
so much. So that was our interview with Eva, a very, very interesting topic. And that discussion could have gone on for hours. It really could.
Yeah, I mean, it's again, it wasn't the most paranormally centered topic.
Yeah.
But it kind of could offshoot into the paranormal.
Oh, yeah.
We did touch on the paranormal, so hopefully your listeners aren't too concerned that there wasn't too much ghost talk. But it's a very interesting subject anyway, and one that I know I'm an advocate of. Not so much healthy eating if you knew me, but if just kind of like meditating and looking after your state of mind.
Lifestyle choice, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's what
and as we've said before, what we eat and drink prior to an investigation and how it can impact your spirituality and your paranormal experiences. And I urge any of you listeners, if you do go on a ghost hunt, or if you do want to just try and contact spirits a little more frequently, do pay attention to what you eat and drink, and meditation and the tips that Eva's just giving you there. And we've had tips from people like Claire Waters on the previous show and stuff like that. So do take heed of those tips and put it to good use, and let us know any feedback. If you do start doing it and you all of a sudden you're seeing you're like the kid in The Sixth Sense and you're seeing ghosts everywhere, then let us know because we'll pass that feedback on to the guests. And
I find it quite a good coincidence as well. As of recording this, it's the 10th of October and it's World Mental Health Day. And obviously we've been chatting a lot about people's mental health and that sort of thing. So
synchronicity at its best. Synchronicity at its best, right there. I guess we'll start winding it up. So remember what we spoke about at the start of the show. If you have an opinion on what we discussed regarding whether TV shows and the entertainment industry was a good thing or a bad thing, please leave your comments, your reactions in the comments. Contact us at the paranormalparadigmpodcast@gmail.com, or contact us via our Facebook page and let us know what you think on that subject, and indeed any other subjects that you'd like us to discuss going forward, any ideas for the shows, and any guests that you'd like us to have on the show.
Any suggestions, just throw them out there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've got a couple lined up. You'll remember the ill-fated episode 4 with Melissa Martell, so we're due to have Melissa back on soon. Because, as you may or may not know, we lost half of the audio there, so we had to take that whole show down, which was a sad day in the world of Paranormal Paradigm podcast. But we live and breathe and we move on. And we should have an interesting guy I'm trying to get on to come on and talk about Bigfoot, which is
that should be a very interesting topic.
So again, moving away from ghosts but still paranormal, more into the field of cryptids. And if I can get him on, that should be a fantastic show. Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoy it. And we look forward to speaking to you soon.
Yeah, take care everyone, and we'll speak next time.